Hi, I'm Odellin. They invited me to my sister's promotion party, again. But, like always, they forgot to put my name on the guest list. And then? They laughed at my daughter's handmade gift, called me used, toasted to my failures with champagne. But that night didn't end the way they planned. Because someone stood up, and when they did, the whole room finally looked at me. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been left out by your own family? Dropped from the story like you were never even part of it? If so, tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone. It started the same way most evenings do. Quiet. I was rinsing out Mira's lunchbox when I heard the metallic clang of the mailbox outside. It was late, past 6. That soft golden Texas sun was pouring through the blinds, turning the dingy laminate countertop into something almost beautiful. For a second, I let myself feel it, that warmth, that ordinary, gentle peace that belonged just to me. And then I saw the envelope. Cream-colored, silver print, fancy. I didn't have to guess who it was from. Only one person in the family used stationery that whispered, "You're invited, but know your place." Still, I opened it, even when I already knew. You're cordially invited to celebrate Callista's promotion to Vice President of Client Experience. Underneath, Miss Odelia Shipcar and guest. Odelia. They got my name wrong. Again. They could have fixed it with a text, one line. But they didn't. Because to them, I was the typo. I tucked the envelope behind the cereal box before Mira could see it. She was humming in the living room, making a paper rocket from a toilet paper roll. I leaned on the sink and stared at the floor. My name wasn't long, wasn't hard to spell, just unimportant. That's what it really said. That night, after I threw away the last glue-covered popsicle stick and wiped the table clean, I told myself it didn't matter. I didn't have to go. No one would miss me. But by morning, guilt had already taken its seat at our breakfast table. "Mommy, what's this?" Mira asked, holding the RSVP card I had stupidly left out. Her face lit up. "Are we going to Aunt Callie's party?" She was 6. She didn't remember the last party, the one where Grandma raised a toast to how impressive it was to raise a child on expired yogurt. Mira hadn't heard the laughter, didn't see the looks, didn't carry the kind of shame that sticks to you like secondhand smoke. "I guess we are," I said, brushing toast crumbs from her cheek. Because I couldn't take the look she would have given me if I said no. That's how it always was. My desire to be done with them fighting the small, desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe someone would say, "It's good to see you. I'm glad you came," and mean it. That night, while Mira slept nestled in her pile of stuffed animals, I got a message from my mother. "Please don't make this night about you. Just smile, be polite, don't bring up old stuff." Callista worked hard for this. No greeting, no "how are you?" Just rules. Like I was a hazard, a risk, a crack in the polished surface they wanted the world to see. I stared at her message for a long time, let it press against my chest like a weight. I wanted to reply, wanted to ask her if she'd ever stopped to think about why I didn't show up anymore, but I didn't. I just deleted it. Then I pulled the one formal dress I owned from the back of the closet. It still had a broken side zipper. I had to shimmy into it and pin it shut with a safety clip. I ironed it anyway. My hands shook a little. In the bathroom, door locked, silence wrapping around me like a blanket, it hit me again. The ache. That deep, bone-level ache of wanting to belong to people who didn't want you back. I sat on the edge of the tub and cried quietly. Not from sadness, not really. But because hope, when it gets too small, hurts like a splinter you can't dig out. The next morning, the sun poured in sooner than I wanted. I hadn't slept. Mira danced into the kitchen in glitter sneakers and a tutu over her leggings. "Surprise!" she shouted, holding up a crooked piece of folded paper. Inside was a card she made. Stick figures, a big pink heart, written in purple marker, "To the best mommy, you're my boss." I couldn't speak. I just pulled her into my arms and held on longer than I had to. "Can we bring cookies, Vishem?" she asked. "The ones with sprinkles?" Of course we can. Even though I knew those cookies would end up ignored on a table between gift baskets and expensive wine bottles. But she wanted to give something. And I wasn't going to teach her that giving only counts when people clap for it. We packed them in a small tin. She decorated it with dinosaur stickers. I tucked it gently into a tote next to wipes and her favorite book. In the car, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. Hair tied back, lipstick barely on, eyes a little puffy. "You're not here to be liked," I whispered. "You're here to be kind. To her." But deep down, I didn't fully believe it. Because somewhere, under the practiced smile and layered silence, I still wanted to be seen. We pulled into the downtown Austin parking garage 20 minutes early. Mira had fallen asleep, cookie crumbs still stuck to her cheeks. I parked in a spot far from the entrance. No valet, not for us. By the time we stepped out of the elevator and onto the rooftop, the party was already in full swing. Golden balloon arches, marble pillars, a string quartet playing a slowed-down version of Ain't No Mountain High Enough. The sun hadn't quite set yet, and everything was glowing like fire behind glass. Mira gasped. "It looks like a palace, Mommy." I smiled and adjusted her cardigan. "It's fancy, huh?" She nodded, her eyes wide with awe. We passed the check-in table. A young guy with a Bluetooth earpiece barely looked up as he handed me a program. "Follow the sign for table assignments," he muttered. 12 tables near the stage, each with gold name plaques. Family, executives, mentors. I wasn't on any of them. Then a woman in all black tapped my shoulder. "Ma'am, are you Odell?" I nodded. "Table 14, she said, motioning past the catering trays. Then she walked away. We made our way through the maze of silken gowns and stiff smiles, down a narrow path behind the main seating. Past the servers, the catering trays, the rows of stacked banquet chairs. Finally, we reached it. Table 14, a plain folding table with a printed paper sign that read "Overflow." It felt like being filed under miscellaneous. Around the table sat a teenage cousin I didn't recognize, 2 corporate interns still figuring out where to set their gift bags, a lighting vendor, and someone's quiet spouse sipping a sparkling water. I gave Mira a soft smile and helped her into her seat, pulled her chair in gently, trying to make this corner feel less like an afterthought. One of the interns leaned over. "You with the photographer crew?" I blinked. "No, I'm family." He nodded with polite indifference, the kind that doesn't ask follow-up questions. I pulled the cookie tin from my bag and placed it on the table beside Mira. She reached for a breadstick, excitement still glowing on her face. "Mommy, when's the cake?" I looked toward the stage. Staff were setting up a projection screen. "Soon, baby," I said, steadying my voice. Then I saw her. Callista. Center stage, surrounded. She wore a navy blue jumpsuit that shimmered under the string lights. Someone handed her a glass of champagne. Her laughter rang out like a bell. And when she spotted me, she paused. Then walked over, poised, polished, perfect. "Oh, wow," she said, her voice sweet as ice. "You came. That's unexpected." I didn't ask what she meant. I'd been unexpected my whole life. Then she turned to Mira. "Hey, sweetie, still into coloring?" Her tone shifted, syrupy sweet, the kind of voice you use with strangers' kids at the airport. Mira nodded. "I made cookies." Before I could say anything else, another woman appeared beside Callista, tall, confident, box braids cascading over her shoulder, a power suit in sleek charcoal gray. "Jasmine," Callista beamed. "Come meet my niece. She's adorable." She placed a light hand on Mira's shoulder, then, like an afterthought, added, "Oh, and that's her mom." Just that. Not my sister. Not Odell. Just her mom. Jasmine smiled warmly. "Oh, do you work with kids too?" My throat dried. Mira tugged at my hand. I just nodded. "Yes." It was easier than trying to explain the full history of why no one in this family seemed to remember who I was. "That's nice," Jasmine said. "Takes a lot of patience." I gave a tight smile. "Yes, it does." Jasmine turned back to Callista and began talking about client onboarding. And just like that, I faded again, like a curtain drawn too far from the spotlight. Back at our table, the program began. The screen lit up with a scrolling photo montage. Callista at ribbon cuttings, Callista on global business trips, Callista in matching company polos beside smiling teams. A caption read, "To the women who lead with vision, power, and grace." Mira clapped. I didn't. I just stared at Callista's name, lit up, centered, celebrated. Mine had been left off a table card. Again. I looked down at my shoes. The leather cracked along the edges. I'd worn them to interviews, to parent-teacher nights, once to a funeral. But never to a place like this. Never to a room where someone I helped rise forgot I existed. Mira tapped my arm. "Mommy, are you sad?" Her voice was small, careful. I looked at her wide, worried eyes. My throat clenched. "No, baby," I said gently. "I'm just remembering something." A library printer. A worn-out resume template. A night I stayed up past midnight fixing bullet points on Callista's first internship application, while she went out with her sorority friends. No one ever thanked me, not once. A photographer passed our table and paused. "Could you step aside, ma'am? I need the sign in the background." I moved. Mira held my hand. And just before I fully stepped out of frame, I whispered under my breath, "One day I won't be the one stepping aside." Then the MC's voice echoed through the rooftop, smooth and confident. "Tonight we celebrate the incomparable Callista Vaughn, newly appointed Vice President of Marketing." Polite applause. Mira squeezed my hand. "It's her big night, right, Mommy?" I nodded, lips tight. The screen behind the podium flickered to life again. A video from Callista's CEO played. He called her a rising force, credited her with transforming outdated systems. I almost laughed. Because the real transformation started years ago, in our shared bedroom, when I taught her how to write a subject line that didn't sound like a scam. But none of that made it into tonight's slideshow. Next came her manager, a man in his 50s who kept calling her our golden girl. Then Callista took the mic. The crowd leaned in. Cameras lifted. I sat up straighter. She started by thanking the company, her team, her mentors, all the expected things. Then she raised her champagne flute and smiled. "And of course," she said, "I have to acknowledge my older sister." Mira's eyes lit up. "That's you," she whispered, her whole body vibrating with excitement. My heart thumped. I tried not to hold my breath. Callista smiled wide, like she was about to offer something sincere. "The strongest woman I know, a single mom, resilient, tireless." I sat taller, and clearly unwanted by anyone else. Laughter. A beat of silence. Then louder laughter. Some gasped first, unsure if they heard it right. Others laughed harder, loving the shock. Some just looked around, confused about whether they should laugh too. I didn't move. My hands froze around my water glass, the condensation slick under my fingers. Mira's smile disappeared. She turned to me, confused, hurt. "Why are they laughing at you, Mommy?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't even breathe. Callista moved on, like nothing happened. "And now the real celebration can begin." More applause. I thought it was over. I prayed it was. But then I heard her. My mother. Her voice, slicing through the air like broken glass. "She's a used product," Isolde called out, raising her glass. "But hey, she still polishes up well." This time the laughter roared. No hesitations. I blinked. Mira's lip trembled. She turned her face away, fingers clutching mine like she was drowning. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But I didn't. I just looked straight ahead. Like I was watching a play where I knew the ending, but had to sit through it anyway. No one came to check on me. No one told them to stop. They just laughed. The same people who used to say family first over turkey at Christmas now raised their glasses to humiliate me in front of my daughter. Someone clinked their glass, signaling the next speaker, but I didn't hear a word. My ears buzzed with that high-pitched white noise that fills your head when your heart is pounding too hard, too fast. I looked at Mira. Her eyes were red, her hands clenched in her lap. She wasn't crying. She was trying not to. And that nearly shattered me. I leaned down. "We're okay," I whispered. I wasn't even sure if it was true. I glanced at Callista. She was already giggling again with two women I didn't recognize, her glass refilled. Isolde was still holding court, her arm slung around some distant cousin who was probably too new to know any better. And the rest of them? Nodding, laughing, drinking, complicit. That was when it shifted. Something quiet inside me. Not sadness, not pity. Clarity. This isn't my family anymore. Mira still had the frame in her lap, the one she'd worked on for 2 afternoons. Glitter glued around the edges, a sketch of Callista in marker with high heels, a red blazer, and what Mira called power hair. She'd even added a gold crown sticker in the corner. "Because Aunt Callie's like a queen now," she'd told me. She tugged on my sleeve gently. "Can I give it to her now, Mommy?" I hesitated. Every instinct screamed, no. I wanted to protect her from what I already knew would come next, but she was proud. She was glowing with love, and I wasn't going to punish her for that. I nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." She beamed, clutched the frame like a treasure, and skipped across the floor. It took her a while to reach Callista, dodging servers, weaving through guests, sipping from flutes. But she made it. Tapped Callista gently on the elbow. Callista turned and looked down. "Oh, hi," she said, voice polite, distant. Her eyes flicked from Mira to the gift. "I made this for you," Mira said proudly. "Congratulations." She held it out like a trophy. Callista tilted her head. smiled that tight hostess smile, the one she used when she didn't want to offend, but didn't really care either. "Ah, you're sweet," she said, then turned back to her friends. "But I don't really have a place for handmade stuff in my condo. Very minimalist vibe." She patted Mira's shoulder, like she was returning a borrowed puppy. "Maybe your mom can keep it for you." The pause that followed was long enough to sting. A woman next to her muffled a laugh behind her hand. A man near the dessert bar pretended to sip his drink and looked away. Mira didn't move. She stood frozen, still holding the frame. Then, slowly, she turned around. Her smile gone, her lips tight. She walked back toward me, eyes wide, trying not to cry in front of strangers. I didn't stand, didn't run to catch her. I was too busy trying not to explode. When she reached me and climbed into my lap, her voice cracked. "Did I do something wrong?" I brushed her hair gently. "No, baby," I whispered. "You were the only one who did something right." Before I could say anything else, the mic screeched slightly. The MC returned to the center of the stage, all smiles. "All right, everyone," he chuckled into the microphone. "Let's keep the energy going. Don't worry, real gifts are coming up next. Not glitter glue tributes." Laughter. At my daughter. They laughed again. I didn't look at them. I looked at Mira. She was staring at the cookie she had decorated, the one she hadn't eaten. It sat on a napkin between us, untouched, like it had been rejected too. I kissed her forehead, pulled her chair closer, let my hand rest on hers. The cardboard frame sat between us now, like a secret no one else wanted. My hand trembled as I took a sip of water, not from sadness anymore, but from rage, from restraint. They didn't just make her feel small. They taught her that kindness was embarrassing. And the worst part? They thought it was funny. I scanned the room. Callista still laughing, champagne in hand. Isolde scrolling her phone, smug. The rest of them, content in their little orbit of polished cruelty. No one stood up. No one said, "That's too far." No one offered Mira a kind word. I leaned over and whispered to her, "We're going to leave soon." She nodded, pressing the frame to her chest like it was a shield. I sat there silently for a while, watching them, memorizing their faces, the ones who laughed, the ones who looked away, the ones who would later say, "Oh, I didn't hear that part." But I heard it. Mira heard it, and I wasn't going to forget. For so long, I believed that keeping the peace meant staying quiet, that silence was maturity. But peace doesn't look like this. Peace isn't humiliation. Peace isn't teaching your child that their love is too loud. I wrapped my arm around her and whispered under the music, under the clink of glass. "They're going to learn what happens when you laugh at the wrong person." It was somewhere between Callista's third toast and the fourth round of shrimp crostini that Mira whispered, "Mommy, I got sauce on my fingers." She held them up like evidence. "Can we get a napkin? I don't want to lick it in public." I smiled, grateful for the moment of normalcy. "Of course, baby." I stood, walked to the buffet. As I bent over to grab napkins, I heard it. Rip. A sharp, dry pop. I froze. The side zipper. The one I'd stitched by hand last winter. It had split, right under my ribs. I clutched the side of my dress, pinching the fabric together like I could sew it shut with hope. I didn't move, didn't breathe. No one helped. No one looked with concern. Some noticed and looked away. People who act like you're invisible until you're humiliated. Then suddenly, you're worth watching. Mira noticed, of course. Without a word, she took off her little cardigan and tied it around my waist. A crooked knot, a lopsided bow. "Now no one will see, Mommy," she whispered. "You still look pretty." And that broke me. Not in a loud way. Not in sobs or shouting. But in the quiet crumbling behind my eyes. I turned away from her so she wouldn't see me cry, used the inside of my elbow to wipe my face. Not because I was ashamed, but because she was the one patching me together, and I didn't want her to see the pieces still falling. We walked slowly back to table 14, her small hand in mine, my steps heavier, my breath uneven. Every motion reminded me of the tear in the dress, the split seam pulling at my side like a reminder. You don't belong here. Not even your clothes want to stay. As we passed through the center of the venue, I glanced up at the massive projection screen again. A new set of photos played in a slow loop. Callista at a whiteboard, Callista shaking hands with the CEO, Callista surrounded by friends under a company banner. And then, the garage, our parents' old house, 10 years ago. The day I helped her rehearse her very first pitch deck. I'd printed each slide, taped them to the wall. I was standing beside her in the original photo, sweats, coffee cup, red marker in hand, coaching her through the opening line. But in this version, the image had been cropped. Neatly, Perfectly. I was gone. Erased. Not a blur, not a shadow. Just gone. I sat back down and reached for my water glass. My hands were shaking again. Mira had taken out a pink crayon and was quietly drawing on a napkin. She looked up at me. "I can tell you don't feel happy here," she said softly. "We can go." I opened my mouth to say yes, to grab our things, to leave, to walk out and let them toast each other's cruelty without us. But then I looked at her, really looked at her. She was learning something tonight, and if I walked away, again, what would I be teaching her? That kindness means shrinking? That being ignored means you should disappear? No, I'd already taught her too much about silence. So I stayed. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed her to see that staying could be the first step to saying no. Callista gave another toast. More laughter erupted near the champagne bar. My mother, sitting with a woman in pearls and fake concern, was nodding like she had something wise to offer. Mayra leaned her head against my arm. Her warmth, her weight, her stillness anchored me. I reached for my phone, opened a message thread I hadn't touched in years, typed something short, specific, then hit send. I slid the torn seam further beneath the tablecloth and sat straighter in my chair. A waiter passed with champagne flutes. "Champagne, ma'am?" I looked him in the eye. "Not tonight. I need a clear mind." He nodded and moved on. My voice was calm. But my eyes, they had remembered something. Me. Across the room, the applause, the champagne clinks, the polished praise, all of it continued. But I wasn't listening to the party anymore. I was watching Arthur Delaney. He hadn't moved much. While others laughed, toasted, posed for photos, he stood still, sculpted, observant. His gaze flicked across the crowd, then landed on me. When Callista stepped off the stage, he walked toward her. Their exchange was short, 12 seconds maybe. But I saw her shoulders tighten, her smile falter. Whatever he said, she didn't like it. He didn't look at her like the others did. Not with flattery, not with awe. He looked skeptical. And that told me everything I needed to know. Mira tugged at my hand. "Can we get some air?" "Yes," I said. "I think we both need it." We stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched beneath us, glowing and soft. Downtown Austin, lit up like a map. Cars moved in streams of red and white. Mira leaned on the railing, arms crossed. "Why does Aunt Callie get a party for her job, but you never did?" The question didn't sting. It hollowed. I thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Because I used to think that doing good work was enough." She tilted her head. "It's not?" I didn't answer. There wasn't a clean answer that wouldn't betray everything I'd once believed. 10 years ago, I was the one who told Callista about Arthur Delaney's hiring round for junior analysts. I was freelancing for a campaign firm and ran into him at a networking brunch. Callista had just been laid off. Panicked. Desperate. I dropped her name into the conversation, polished her resume that night, prepped her for the interview like it was mine. She got the job. I got a thank you card that didn't mention my name. After that, she stopped mentioning me at all. And now, here she was, floating through this rooftop celebration like a crowned queen, while I sat at table 14 in a dress pinned together with a child's cardigan. I glanced at Mira. She was twirling one of her curls around her finger, oblivious to the full weight of what tonight was. She had no idea how many rooms I'd helped others enter, just by handing them the key. Back inside, I pulled out my phone again, opened another message thread. Professor Lattimore. She'd mentored me in grad school, chaired a major clean tech board. I'd heard she was attending the upcoming Civic Innovation Gala, where Arthur Delaney was slated to speak. I typed, "Hi, Dr. Lattimore. Would love to reconnect at the Austin Civic Gala if you're still attending. Would be honored to reintroduce myself properly. Warmly, Odell." Send. My heart sped up. Not from fear, from purpose. For the first time all night, I wasn't reacting. I was initiating. When we stepped back inside, Arthur Delaney looked in our direction again. This time I met his gaze. He didn't smile, just nodded. A small, respectful nod. Then turned back to Callista, leaned in, said something again. I couldn't hear it, but it made her glance toward the stage. He gestured toward the mic. "Why don't we open it up?" The words carried across the room. A few guests turned. One woman clapped slowly, unsure if it was the start of something or just filler. The energy shifted. Not chaotic, but electric. Like something deep in the room had tilted, just slightly. Arthur didn't tap the mic, didn't raise his voice. He just stepped forward, and the room followed him. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate leadership, vision, achievement. but I'd like to speak briefly about recognition. He scanned the crowd, not at the executives, not at Callista, at me. There are people in this room who've done more behind the scenes than some have done on stage, he said, and too often those contributions go unmentioned. Heads turned. My mother stopped whispering. Callista stiffened in her chair. Arthur went on. Tonight we honor one sister, but let's not forget who opened the door in the first place. No names. But thunder doesn't need a label to shake the ground. I didn't move. Didn't blink. My hands stayed folded in my lap, but my grip on Mira's didn't loosen, and for the first time that night, I didn't want it to. I wanted her to hold on, to this moment, to this truth. Then, from the back of the room, another voice broke the stillness. I'd like to say something, too. Everyone turned. It was Liliana, a junior associate from Callista's firm. She stepped forward slowly, her hands shaking slightly at her sides. I know this is a celebration, she began, but I want to acknowledge someone who changed my life. Callista smiled, wide, pleased, as if the compliment was already hers. She tilted her chin up, waiting for the praise. But Liliana didn't look at her. She looked at me. Miss Shipcar helped me during my mental health leave, she said. Her voice steadied. She sent me resources, checked in, made sure I wasn't alone. Callista's smile twitched. That's touching, Liliana, she interrupted lightly. But Liliana didn't even glance at her. I never got to say this before, she said, voice firm now. But thank you. You didn't know it, but you saved me. And for the first time that night, the applause was real. Not polite. Not performative. Just real. Not for Callista. For me. I didn't stand. Didn't bow my head. Didn't cry. I just breathed. As if, after all this time, the air had finally returned to the room. Arthur stepped up one more time, his voice steady. Some of us work quietly, he said, but the impact isn't smaller. It's just stronger over time. Then he stepped down from the podium. As he passed my table, he leaned toward me and whispered, I have something for you, but not here. I nodded. Callista wasn't smiling anymore. She was still seated, but stiff, as if she were replaying every conversation of the last hour, trying to figure out when the power began to shift. Mira turned to me, her eyes wide and shimmering. See, she whispered, you didn't need a big party to be seen. I didn't answer. I just reached over, tucked a curl behind her ear, and looked around the room. The people who once laughed at me now shifted in their chairs, uneasy. I hadn't shouted, hadn't stormed out. I'd stayed. And in my stillness, the foundation under their performance had started to crumble. Dessert trays began to weave between tables. Someone dimmed the lights to set the mood. Arthur leaned toward me and said, walk with me. I didn't ask where. Didn't need to. Mira squeezed my hand. I leaned in. I'll be right back, baby. Sit tight. I followed him out of the ballroom and into a long hallway lined with corporate photos from galas past. The click of my low heels echoed louder than I expected. It was almost a relief just to hear something real again. But halfway down the hall, I heard it. Sharp heels. Behind us. Of course. Callista. What exactly are you doing? She snapped, stepping between Arthur and me like she had every right to command the floor. You've made your point. Don't embarrass yourself further. Arthur didn't flinch. I'm giving credit where it's long overdue, he said evenly. Callista scoffed. You always act like she's some quiet genius. She's just someone who couldn't cut it. So she clung to being the kind one. I stared at her. Not with rage. With stillness, sharp and clear. No, I replied. I just stopped pretending that silence equals dignity. She blinked. I stepped closer. I chose to live with intention. You chose applause. That landed. Not like a slap, but like a locked door. She blinked again, realizing there was no way back through it. Arthur gestured toward a bench. This won't take long. He handed me a flat box, small, about the size of a paperback. Your daughter left this on the main table, he said. Figured it wasn't meant to get lost. I opened it carefully. Inside was Mira's cardboard frame. Bent now, a little glitter smeared. But behind it, something else. A folded sheet of heavy paper. I unfolded it slowly. An official letter. An offer. From a national nonprofit. Arthur sat on the board. They were launching a mentorship division focused on resilience in overlooked voices. And they wanted me to lead the pilot program. We need people who know how to endure, Arthur said. But more importantly, people who know how to rebuild. I stared down at the frame in my lap. All night it had been a joke. A prop for ridicule. But now, it was carrying the weight of something far bigger. I clutched it gently to my chest and nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me, he said. Just take what's already yours. We walked back toward the ballroom. Inside, the slideshow loop had resumed, but it had changed. Someone, maybe Arthur, maybe someone else who was paying attention, had replaced one of the centerpiece photos. There we were, 10 years ago. The garage. Callista mid-pitch, a little blurry. And me, right next to her. Red marker in hand, coaching her through it. They'd never shown that photo publicly before. Now it was there, centered, under a new caption. At the real beginning. Guests turned toward the screen, then toward our table. The room went quiet. Isolde looked like someone had unplugged her oxygen tank. Callista stood, frozen mid-breath, caught between outrage and confusion. No spotlight now. Just consequence. I made my way back to table 14. Mira hopped down from her chair. You ready? I asked. She nodded, slipping her hand into mine. I turned to a staff member nearby. Thank you. You've all been wonderful tonight. Then I glanced toward my mother. You don't have to say anything, I said gently. I already stopped listening. I didn't wait for a response. Callista stood with her arms crossed, tightly, protectively, like she was holding herself together. You'll always have the room, I said quietly, but I have what matters. We walked toward the exit. Arthur gave a small nod from the bar. At the threshold, Mira clutched the frame to her chest and whispered, Next time I want to make 2 of these. I smiled, truly smiled, from somewhere deeper than pride. There won't need to be a next time, baby. I opened the door. The lesson's already been learned. The lights of the venue faded behind us as we walked out into the velvet night. The car ride home was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't ache, just settles, peaceful and whole. The roads were mostly empty. Long stretches of glowing lamplight flickered across the windshield. Mira was asleep in the back seat, head tilted, her arms still wrapped around the cardboard frame like it was something sacred. I glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Safe. Whole. Enough. And me? I was finally enough for myself. There were no apologies as we left. No one chased after us with trembling hands or regretful words. No one ran up to say I was wrong. But that silence, it didn't feel like erasure anymore. It felt like release. For years, I had been gaslit into believing that closure needed to come wrapped in someone else's regret, that I had to wait for their sorry to move forward. But tonight, I realized something else. I whispered it to no one in particular, just to the dark, and now I'm breathing just fine without it. By the time we pulled into our small house in Round Rock, the moon had already climbed halfway across the sky. I parked, sat still for a moment. No rush to carry Mira inside. Just watched her sleep, gently, peacefully, like she knew we'd walked through something big and come out the other side. Inside, I placed her cardboard frame on the bookshelf in the living room. Not tucked behind books, not hidden in a drawer. Centered. That glitter-smudged frame, mocked earlier, wasn't just a child's art project. It was proof. Proof of love. Of voice. Of everything they'd tried to tell us didn't matter. My phone buzzed. Aleliana's name lit up the screen. Her message was short. I hope you know you started something tonight. No punctuation, just that, I replied with a single heart. Then I pulled out the folded offer letter from Arthur. I'd read it twice at the venue, but not really seen it. This time, I circled the start date with a blue pen, drew a little star beside it, tucked it into the kitchen drawer on top of a stack of bills. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I must have fallen asleep on the couch. Mira crawled onto my chest at some point in the night. Her breath was soft and steady against my collarbone, and for once, I slept deeply, without that old ache in my ribs. In the morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen. Not dramatic, just soft, like a quiet reset. I was already up when Mira wandered in, rubbing her eyes. Are we going back to Aunt Callie's again today? She asked, still sleepy. I knelt beside her. No, sweetheart, I said, brushing a curl from her forehead. Next time we're going somewhere better. Like Disneyland? She asked, perking up. I laughed, really laughed, the kind that shakes loose old weight. Something even better, I said. A place where we don't have to shrink. She grinned, satisfied. I handed her a bowl of cereal and poured myself a cup of coffee. We sat together at the small table, just the 2 of us. No slideshow, no applause, no catered pastries, just us. Quiet, present. And for the first time in forever, the morning felt like it belonged to me. After breakfast, I walked her to school. She waved 3 times at the same teacher. I waved 2, then kept walking. Around the corner, I slipped into a little cafe, one I used to hide in during my loneliest years. But today, I didn't sit in the back. I chose a window seat. I opened my laptop, ordered a black coffee, and typed the subject line for a new proposal draft. And rewriting the blueprint when resilience speaks first. I paused, looked out at the slow city traffic, the teens waiting at the bus stop, the barista dancing while restocking cups. And then I heard it. My own voice, not out loud, but inside. Steady, soft, unshaken. For years I let them define me. The failure, the burden, the invisible one. But the truth? They only ever saw what made them comfortable, not what made me real. And now they don't get to look away anymore. I closed my laptop, stood tall, and walked toward my next meeting. My real one. Not in a boardroom, but in the life I had quietly, stubbornly built between the cracks. As the door swung open and sunlight hit my face, I thought of Mira's words. And you didn't need a big party to be seen. And for the first time in my life, I believed her. Sometimes the people who should have known your worth are the last to see it. But by the time they do, you've already moved on. You don't need applause to prove you mattered. You don't need a mic to reclaim your story. Have you ever been the one they tried to silence, only to rise anyway? If this story spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe for more real, powerful family drama that cuts deep and heals wide.